C'est pour moi un grand plaisir de m'exprimer devant vous et dans cette maison, la vôtre. Je remercie l'Association des journalistes européens et sa section belge en particulier. J'ai été invité à parler de quelque chose de simple, à parler de l'état du monde et de la situation de l'Union européenne. Parler du monde tel qu'il est aujourd'hui n'est pas une chose facile. Aucun modèle, aucun slogan, aucun paradigme ne résiste aux évolutions de ces dernières années. Mais les périodes de transition et de grandes altérations sont toujours ainsi. Incertaines et fluides, avec des opportunités nouvelles, mais aussi des risques plus grands. De la manipulation des bilans financiers virtuels à l'effondrement des économies bien réelles, de la crainte des nouvelles pandémies à la difficulté de trouver des parades efficaces à des menaces toujours plus asymétriques, de la bonne ou de la mauvaise utilisation d'Internet ou de Twitter. Nous sommes sans doute brutalement entrés dans le nouveau siècle. My dear friends, we know very well that in this century, threats are global. Take the economic crisis as an example. The speed at which it spread from the United States to the rest of the world, how quickly it has contaminated the whole financial system and then the real economy. It has been a dramatic reminder of the dark side of globalization. It has affected us all, and the response cannot be but global. That crisis reminds us the inform brutally and suddenly of an eternal contradiction. Markets, resources, risks are global, yet political legitimacy continues to be local or continues to be national. And we need to find a way out of that contradiction. And it seems to me that how Europe works, how Europe is, can give us some good clues about how to come out of this contradiction. I will come back later to this point. Let me say that one of the main trends that define the age we live in is what we may call power shift. Power shift within states, but power shift between states. Within states to society, to various groups in the society, to markets, and even to individuals. Between states is very clear, from the West to the countries which are emerging. A consequence of that, in particular this basic second trend, is the necessary enlargement of the main international fora. We have to give a proper voice and a proper place to all the key players. You cannot expect people to contribute to solutions if they have not been involved in shaping the strategy. The almost natural way in which the G8 has given way to the G20 in addressing the crisis is a first step, but that is not enough. It cannot be restricted to the economic issues. It has to apply to other regional issues like security, climate change, or maybe the weapons of mass destruction and their spread. However, we must bear in mind that some of the beneficiaries of this new situation do not necessarily share our view of the world. They do not share sometimes our guiding values or the principles that inspire us. Therefore, the coin of our multipolar world, as always, has two faces: opportunity and risk. It's in our hands to make opportunity prevail. These trends are being accelerated by the economic crisis, but the old agenda is still there to be addressed and to be responded. Global threats and regional issues we need to tackle, and we have to tackle. Let me make some examples. The proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, in particular nuclear weapons, is, in my view, the most important threat. Proliferation follows a perverse rationale of escalation. Absolute security for one means total insecurity for the rest. Therefore, the solution can only come through international cooperation and a tightening of multilateral mechanism. That is a European unity policy, as is a decisive bid for disarmament. Until recently, we were fairly isolated in this position. Fortunately, things have changed, and for the better. In his speech in Prague, President Obama presented an ambitious program for action, which we do share, and we can share. He argued for a world without nuclear weapons, although he did point out that he did not expect to see it in his lifetime. I share that ideal, and I want to be more optimistic about the time scale. To push for disarmament will be the key to the major challenge that we have, which is the application of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The whole non-proliferation system, as you know, rests in a delicate balance. A quid pro quo, which non-nuclear states agree to forgo nuclear weapons if those who possess them agree to reduce their arsenal significantly. And the third pillar is to ensure a transfer of technology for civilian use of nuclear energy to countries who do want to do that. This is our action plan for addressing nuclear proliferation. This is the most important problem of security, or one of the most important problems of security. But let me say that energy security is another factor of risk. I can assure you that if we imagine a family from Bulgaria, for instance, deprived from gas for heating in the middle of freezing temperature last January, we will understand what we mean. This is still an unresolved business for Europe. And we cannot talk about energy security or design strategies in that area without keeping climate change in mind. Climate change is the first authentically global challenge facing mankind. It threatens everybody, without exception, and the solution can only come from a worldwide agreement. And it has an additional feature that makes it exceptional. We know that the solution depends on accepting a figure, a particular figure, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, a figure that has a scientific basis. You will agree that this situation in which a scientific consensus is the basis of an agreement is not usual in international relations. The conference that will take place in Copenhagen next December is the key rendezvous. We all have to work hard to make it a success. But beyond that, there will be no lasting solution unless we address the developing countries' profound sense of injustice and distrust in this matter. Their question is legitimate. Why should they pay for a problem that we in the first world created? But the answer is equally clear, because we have gone well beyond the point where developed countries can solve the problem alone. Mes chers amis, permettez-moi quelques mots sur les conflits régionaux les plus importants du moment. Commençons pour le Proche-Orient. Le dernier discours du Premier ministre d'Israël, Netanyahou, a esquissé une perspective politique avec la reconnaissance de la notion d'État palestinien, même limitée. C'est un premier pas suffisant. En revanche, la question de l'arrêt de la colonisation des territoires palestiniens n'est pas encore réglée. Mais quelques jours avant, au Caire, le président Obama a voulu marquer une rupture. Les grands principes qu'il a posés sont les mêmes principes que les Européens défendent depuis longtemps. La main tendue au monde arabe, la référence à l'initiative arabe de paix, l'obligation de créer un État palestinien. Les Palestiniens sont engagés dans un difficile exercice de réconciliation. Unis, ils ont la capacité de construire leur État. Nous le savons. Et nous continuerons à les aider dans leur entreprise. Un mot sur le Liban. Le Liban vient de voter. Les choix de la modération et du pragmatisme l'ont porté. La voie est maintenant ouverte à davantage de stabilité. En clair, une nouvelle dynamique se met en place dans la région. L'État palestinien ne sera pas créé par les seuls Israéliens et les seuls Palestiniens. La responsabilité de la communauté internationale et de l'Union est engagée. Nous ne pouvons pas échouer. Des mots sur l'Afrique. L'Europe, mais aussi le reste du monde, ont besoin d'une Afrique stable et prospère. Premièrement, l'Afrique doit être aidée face à la crise économique actuelle. Ne pas le faire serait irresponsable. L'extrême pauvreté, la famine, doivent rester toujours très chauds dans nos priorités. Au-delà des questions morales, c'est un impératif politique. Deuxièmement, nous devons poursuivre nos efforts sur les régions charnières. Les Grands Lacs. L'Union européenne a lancé 4 opérations ces dernières années. Le Soudan et le Tchad. Là encore, l'Union européenne s'est physiquement engagée sur le terrain. Laissez-moi dire des mots sur le dernier axe des efforts impératifs, le corps de l'Afrique. Il y a bien sûr la lutte contre la piraterie dont l'Union européenne a pris l'initiative. Mais il y a aussi la nécessité d'aider la Somalie à sortir du chaos pour éviter qu'elle ne devienne un nouveau foyer du terrorisme international. Cela a un intérêt stratégique majeur pour l'Europe. In Afghanistan, we know very well that there will be no military solution. It has to be a political one. That's why these summer's presidential elections are of such fundamental importance. They must give sufficient democratic legitimacy to the next president so that he and his government can take over responsibility for governing the country. The European Union therefore has 2 immediate objectives. but in particular one. First, to accompany the election process that will take place in the month of August and ensure that it is credible. Second, to help the Afghan authorities acquire capacities they need to run the country. For that reason, the Union has launched a police mission that trains the Afghan National Police in providing safety to Afghan citizens. But also is fundamental the regional context in which Afghanistan is found. Without that, it will not be a solution. It will be impossible to stabilize Afghanistan without a stable Pakistan. Again, the European Union has a fundamental interest in contributing to this international effort. Iran is another neighbor of Afghanistan. I will not enter in detail now, maybe there will be some questions later on, but you know that the situation in Afghanistan today, to say the least, is complicated. But let me say, after having gone very superficially to these issues, that the important thing is none of these challenges, global or regional, that I have mentioned, can be confronted by one country or one group of countries alone. They all require a global response. For some time, many people thought that increasing interdependence would lead automatically, almost naturally, to international coordination. Now we know that this is not the case. But globalization and interdependence are here to stay. We therefore need to find a compelling principle to underpin such coordination. We need to answer the question of how to organize a globalized world. And we need to do so marrying the contradiction I mentioned at the beginning. Power is localized, legitimized, or locally legitimized, but the challenges are global in nature. The principle, or the probable principle that I like to defend, of responsible sovereignty, may help us find an answer. It is a principle based on one fact that will not change. We live in a world of sovereign states. Coercion is not conceivable except in extreme cases, and then only vis-à-vis one isolated country. The only way out is that the states assume responsibilities for the external consequences of their acts. And I think the European Union has learned that a long time ago. It will take probably a long time for that idea to make its way and crystallize into action. But as long as policy is made at national level, legitimacy will be purely locally. It is on the basis of that legitimacy that responsible sovereignty will be able to organize a globalized world and respond to the global challenges. And the question may be now, where is Europe in this big picture? The crisis that we are living in has been a huge test. And it came at a time of European institutional uncertainty. From the very beginning, the European Union was torn between forces of fragmentation, driven by national reflexes, and a renewed push for collective initiative. The huge stabilizing factor of the monetary union has been fundamental. Without the euro, there would have been chaos in the currency markets. But there are also big problems outside the Eurozone, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. banks, currencies, fiscal positions are all under pressure, and problems are not yet behind us. But we are honest, we should also acknowledge the pressure of the single market. There is no doubt that how we shape the reaction matters from an economic point of view. But here is another wider issue. The European Union is based on strong rules, independent institutions, the four freedoms, and the concept of solidarity and responsibility. And we cannot put all that at risk. After 1945, there was a fundamental paradigm change in Europe, from international politics as a zero-sum game to one where people realize they can only be safe, they can only be secure, they can only be prosperous if their neighbors are also secure, safe, and prosperous. If we play with these principles, it would be hugely damaging for all of us, to Europe itself, and to our global standing and global influence. A Europe of bending rules, a Europe of fragmentation, is a Europe whose voice will not be heard around the world. In 2030, to take a year, only 1 in 12 human beings will be European. We risk losing any meaningful international influence. But it's also clear that we are confronted with centrifugal forces and pressures. In these cases, member states have regrouped and pulled together. And this has been the case since the autumn up to the European Council of last Friday. That is a telling example that the European project remains strong, that your hard work, our hard work, your day-to-day efforts to build the united Europe produce tangible results. That makes our life better. The last European Council has also cleared the way for a new referendum in Ireland. I do hope that the Lisbon Treaty will be enforced by the end of the year. It would have been better to have it 4 years ago. That will be the most direct, the most powerful response from Europe to the new shaping of the world of today. And that will be the best manner to ensure the right, in the proper right, in the proper place of Europe in the world of today. Thank you very much.